Our schools are supposed to be centers for formation, centers for holistic training, centers for morality, a center where someone is formed both in mind and heart. And that is why when you graduate in a university, they usually say that you have been found worthy in character first than in learning, which is you have been found worthy in character and in learning to be awarded a BSc or a degree in this and that and that and that. And that is why we send our children to school. We send our children to school because we know it's a good thing, because we want them to learn ABC, because we also want them to understand values and virtues and character and moral that will be better for the society. And that is why when President Paul Biya came into power, his vision at the center was rigor and moralization. With moralization, it embodies the value of respecting one's identity and fight against explicit content and uncensored video. Morality stands for the fact that one must be conscious about their body, must be conscious about carrying out acts that may be unpleasant to the general society. And that is why President Paul Biya brought in rigor and moralization. Moralization was supposed to be impacted and implanted in all of our schools, within the secondary, the basic, the university and the high school. Moralization. And that is why you could see that from those who were being trained in our schools, short dresses were not being accepted, unkempt hair were not being accepted, those who are walking with breast pop out were not being accepted, and still not being accepted in some universities because of moralization. Moralization simply means that we must accept the fact that we come from a family, or we come from a nation that respects the dignity of the human person, the sacredness of the human person, which means that which is supposed to be kept in private must remain in private. And that was and is a centered value, or the center policy which President Paul Biya brought in terms of moralization. But with more than 40 years down the road, how far are our schools as far as that President Paul Biya's vision of moralization is concerned? Let us be clear. The vision of moralization is something that President Paul Biya should be applauded for. That moralization keep the society in check and make sure that the society doesn't go above the required value, and keep the sacredness of the human person. The sacredness of the human person is supposed to be at the center of moralization, which in Latin it is called the imago Dei. That image that makes you think and understand that there are things you must not do in public and there are things you must do in private. 40 years down the road, how far are our schools when it comes to moralization? The value of moralization has steadily dropped and is dropping as we go. Now in our secondary schools and some of our universities, it is anything you see, you take, which is, if students are poorly dressed, and when you want to talk to them, they will tell you that you don't have a right to talk to me like that. To some extent, most of these are being paraded, supported, and heavily catalyzed by some parents who, instead of reprimanding their children, instead of telling their children that this dress you are wearing is not supposed to be worn, this look you are taking to school is not supposed to be like that, instead they keep clapping for their children. They clap for their children and they tell their children, wow, Makuku, tu es belle, Makuku, tu es jolie, Makuku, tu es a dumb boy. And all of this cacophony makes the learning environment difficult and increases sexual promiscuity in our schools at the level of bringing in STM, which is heavily active, which is known as sexually transmissible marks. When you have all these, it has made our schools to become more, some of them more of a center that train promiscuous individuals than trained people with holistic character. Go to our secondary schools these days. One will be tempted to ask the question if they are indeed secondary schools. Go to our universities these days. One will be tempted to ask if they are indeed universities or they are glorified secondary schools. Professor Bernard Fallon, in his book titled The Genuine Intellectual, he said a university is not for the mindless mob. It's not for the mob. It's not for people who think they can do whatever they want to do because they say je fais ce que je fais, c'est ma vie, c'est ma choix. It is not for people who think like that. It is not for people who think that they have no principles that govern them. Professor Bernard Fallon, in his book titled The Genuine Intellectual, says a university is not for the mob. It's for the talented tent, those who live by the sacredness of the human, those who respect the value of university, those who understand that university is a research-based center, a center for high academic standard. That is why he said a university is not for the mindless mob but for the talented tent. And he said any university that doesn't respect the principles of university is more of a glorified secondary schools. We have seen videos of our young brothers and sisters in secondary schools, and one is asking, are these porn centers or are these centers for training? This is House of Commons with me, Tah Jarvis.